just you, the mountain, and 7,999 other people taking pics of their special moment. Did you know UNESCO doesn't track over-tourism even though it's one of the biggest threats to their sites? I mean, clearly there's a problem. There are a lot of headlines telling us this. So who exactly is responsible? Hi, I'm Justine, the Nerdy Half, and I am one of those constant travellers that some people kind of complain about. Today I'm not in a UNESCO site. I'm in the beautiful Kiwi bush in Whangarei Quarry Gardens. But I have been to a few UNESCO sites and joined the queues. Should I feel guilty for that? Being the nerdy half, I decided to do a bit of digging, so today's video is about the UNESCO Curse. And just where does the responsibility for over-tourism lie? Is it a UNESCO problem? I mean, their recognition promotes the site, yet they have no authority to actually limit what happens on the ground. Let's look at the Dolomites, for example. Absolutely stunning. Who can blame you for wanting to go there and take a pic of your special moment? Local farmers say they get around 8,000 people tramping through their backyards every day. They're left with trampled grass, a lot of litter, and no compensation for maintaining the track. Not impressed. They did complain about this, but no one was actually listening, so they decided to make them listen by talking to their wallets. They installed a physical turnstile and started charging people €5 to get through it. At first it was just a bit of a publicity stunt, just trying to get attention from the authorities. But when authorities didn't respond, they did it again. Their goal was to get officials to pay attention to the damage and to pay for the upkeep and the management of the sites. They said they didn't want to monetize nature forever. They were just trying to get people to pay attention to what was happening. But still nobody did. They didn't even get told off for it. The authorities just pretty much ignored it. There's a long established right to roam in the Dolomites. So authorities and tourism operators just told travellers to ignore it. They were under no obligation to pay. The Dolomites is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected for its outstanding universal value. It's just one of around 1,200 UNESCO sites around the globe, including Angkor Wat, Machu Picchu, Venice, Hoi An, Mont Saint Michel, Masai Mara, Chichen Itza. The list goes on. I can't tell you how many of those sites suffer from over-tourism because nobody's actually keeping score. Do they not consider it a problem worth counting? Over-tourism isn't a discrete category in the heritage in danger criteria. The results of over-tourism are degradation of authenticity, environmental damage, loss of integrity. Those are reasons you can nominate a site on the danger list, but actual over-tourism isn't. So what that means is that UNESCO is actually a reactive system, not a proactive one. They monitor sites based on self-reporting, they do some periodic vetting, they note the damage and the stress to the site, and then they issue a warning, or in extreme cases they put it on the heritage in danger list. But of course by then the damage is already done, and reversing that damage can be incredibly expensive and sometimes actually impossible. Venice and Machu Picchu are examples of where the damage was being done long before it was put on the list, and where some of that damage is irreversible. If you say something is priceless, then you have the responsibility to guard it. It's like saying this artifact is precious and then just putting it on the shelf without any kind of case to protect it. Some experts say that UNESCO should be a lot stricter and have a lot more responsibility for a site, and that over-tourism should be part of their specific criteria. Or should it? UNESCO was never set up to be that kind of organisation. It doesn't have that mandate, and there is an argument around an international organisation taking control of local treasures. Besides, shouldn't it be the responsibility of the people who are making money from it to take care of it? Or is the problem with governments who take advantage of their World Heritage status or bid for things like the Olympics and so on, but then are slow to put caps on the number of visitors and the way that the site is managed? You might think they're the obvious ones to manage over-tourism, but it's it's a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, they do make the rules, they collect the taxes, they control the infrastructure. They could just step in and say this goes and this doesn't, but it's a little bit more messy. Take Venice, for example. For years, the government helped turn Venice into a global tourist magnet. Big marketing campaigns, major events, and the prestige of the UNESCO label. But management of the site lagged behind. Cruise ships were sailing past fragile buildings, narrow streets were overwhelmed, and basic services were under pressure long before serious measure was put in place. Now they have some trial day tripper fees, and they do have some restrictions on the ships, and that's all going in the right direction. But all these countermeasures came about after over-tourism was a problem. It's kind of messy, you see, because the incentives not to manage over-tourism are far greater than the incentives to manage it. Politicians answer to voters and business owners, most of whom think short term and are very happy about the jobs being created and the spending that's happening. The benefits of their limits and the caps and the fees, that's all going to be long term. It's less visible and therefore less popular when it comes to voters. So sustainability policies often end up just staying on paper or get watered down when they finally do get into practice. When revenue and employment are the loudest voices in the room, preservation just kind of slides down the priority list. The result, Venice just keeps growing in popularity, and it is an awesome place. We were there in the off-season and just loved it, despite the cold and the rain. But during the summer, the city kind of stands somewhere between your dream destination and an overcrowded theme park. And now they're struggling with their infrastructure. Venice is a really good example. If you let over-tourism go on too long, then no amount of UNESCO warnings, local frustration, or even traveller good behaviour is going to fix the damage that's already done. So maybe the responsibility is with the people who are there on the ground, the local community that can see the damage on a daily basis. They can see the crowds around them, they can see the wear and tear. They're the ones that often pay the price to fix it. But they're also the ones that are often getting the profit from the tourism, and this is where it gets tricky. Take Hoi An in Vietnam. This ancient town is famous for its lantern-lit streets, historic buildings, and riverside charm. Tourists flock here by the thousands. And again, Vietnam is one of those countries where Daryl and I loved the vibe of the crowd. And for the locals, tourism is a daily income. Families run guest houses, tailors, cafes, craft shops. Their livelihoods depend on the visitors. But there's a catch. Too many visitors overwhelm the infrastructure and erode the heritage. Historic roads and buildings just get worn down from the constant foot traffic, and traditional ways of life sort of become a bit of a cliched tourist attraction. Or they just get pushed out altogether for the big-scale tourist operators. But still the residents resist the rules around tourism because that's their way of making money. They're understandably going to hold on to that much-needed income up until the point that it's unbearable or the damage is so bad that the tourists stop coming. So they end up having to monitor it themselves, cleaning up the litter, repairing the damaged buildings. But then there's the perspective of the Indigenous communities whose interest in the land goes far beyond profit. Let's look at Uluru National Park in Australia, where the Anangu people co-manage the site with the National Parks Authority. Their input led to a ban on climbing Uluru because they respect the spiritual integrity over visitor numbers. Visitor numbers are still high, but the activity that happens is shaped by Indigenous values. And we have the same sort of approach here in New Zealand. We have many strong examples of Indigenous management that protects our treasures, like their family members. But I can't really claim that this Indigenous management has controlled over tourism because our distance from the rest of the world kind of controls that for us. Wouldn't really be comparing apples with apples. But what about Rapa Nui National Park on Easter Island? The Ma'uhinua Indigenous community has maintained authority managing the park since 2017. They oversee conservation, visitor fees, and cultural education programs. But sadly, Even with Indigenous control, the park still faces over-tourism pressures. Visitor numbers are high compared to their relatively small population, so it puts a lot of impact on their infrastructure. So they have a hard time balancing the economic benefits of tourism with the cost. Indigenous management can provide deep cultural guidance and long-term sustainability, but it doesn't automatically solve the problem. So maybe because we're the problem, we're the ones that have to solve it. Most of us don't even think that we're causing that much harm. Those travellers that keep going around trying to get that must-see shot and tick off the bucket list, and then get all defensive when there's fees imposed or restrictions, and when the locals get a bit mad. I mean, the site was marketed to us. It's open, we've paid our ticket fees, we're following the rules. How are we the problem? Maybe there is no villain here. Maybe it's just the system that rewards short-term gains over long-term benefits. Or maybe that kind of philosophizing is just shifting the blame away from us because we don't want to feel guilty about it. Let's not kid ourselves. Us travellers play a huge role. Every time we post a selfie and neglect to show the crowds around us, every time we take a shortcut through a fragile path, all of this adds up. And I'm thinking of the Great Wall of China. It stretches thousands of kilometres. It's an iconic UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most visited landmarks in the world. Tourists are invited here by the busloads, literally. Couldn't believe my luck when I landed in Beijing for what I thought was going to be a 20-hour stopover in an airport and discovered a free tour of the Great Wall of China. You've got to check out this video. It was incredible. I can definitely understand why tourists flock here. So surely they can't complain about over-tourism. I mean, they're the ones inviting us in. It makes you wonder though. I mean, the Great Wall of China spreads over 21,000 kilometres and we're all squeezed into this little bit. My free tour took me to the Ling part of the wall. The part that's fully restored and easily accessible to tourists makes up only 1% of the entire wall. So that wee part gets crammed with people trampling all over it every day. And sadly, some of us aren't so well behaved. I saw actual graffiti on the Great Wall of China. It's one of the saddest things I've ever seen. We also seem to be there for our short-term benefits and not thinking about the long-term impacts. Probably because those long-term impacts are going to affect someone else, not us. Here's the thing. As travellers, we need to recognise we are big players in this. It's our dollars that are calling the shots. Where and how we spend our money is a lot of what determines what goes on. So we need to start signalling that we do care about the long-term protection over the short-term gratification. And we can do that by the choices we make as travellers. Because for a lot of us, we don't intend to be the negative player, but sometimes we just don't realise the full impact of what we're doing. If you haven't looked in my playlist already, I've got a whole bunch of videos on how you can be a responsible traveller who lives your values in your practice. Hopefully you can tell I care a lot about this. So if you value it too, please share this video with other travellers and subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you can join me. Every week I'm going to be looking at what's going on in the world and digging a bit deeper to see what does that mean for us travellers. I've no idea what's going to happen next week. Whatever it is, I hope you'll be there to find out with me. Until then, happy travels everyone.